such an honor to be here today, especially with Neda, who I've had the pleasure of knowing since I was 5 years old, going up to the ranch and visiting horses. So to start off, right now, there are an estimated 74,000 wild horses in 14,000 burrows, roaming almost 27 million acres overseen by the Federal Bureau of Land Management, or the BLM. At the same time, more than 64,000 captured horses and burros are living in off-range government facilities at a cost of $108 million annually to taxpayers. Back in 1971, Congress unanimously passed a law to protect the dwindling number of horses on the range. Neda, why was that law not a happy ending? Why can't wild horses just be left alone?
Oh, is that my question? Okay. Well, that's a good question. Unfortunately, we live in a political paradigm where, in reality, everything is being managed. We are being managed. Since the 1800s, barbed wire fences went up, and we're managing all those millions of acres are divided, and they're interrupted. Wildlife corridors are interrupted by highways, streets, communities, urban sprawl, et cetera. And so the Bureau of Land Management was established, and they started to create laws. Before the Taylor Grazing Act was created, a lot of animals like sheep, et cetera, they lured people west to homestead. And when the horses came, there was a lot of land that was already overgrazed. But because nobody makes any money on free-ranging wild horses, the wild horses have been scapegoated for centuries, for decades. So for about 50 years, the Bureau of Land Management has managed wild horses because Congress mandated them to in 1971, and they're mandated to be managed under a multiple use management policy, which means everyone can use public lands, we can hunt, we can camp, people can extract energy, and livestock owners can graze public lands through permits. And that also increases the value of their home ranches. So the horses out there, and under the perception of a lot of people, they see them as an invasive species or as a freeloader. But in 1971, when that act passed, it was one of the most emotional pieces of legislation to pass Congress, both the Senate and the House, with no dissenting votes, by the will of the people, second only to the Vietnam War. So you see where the public's emotion is always behind the horses. But there's a lot of politics based on economics, and policies were created. And today we're at a place where a lot of our grazing land that's allocated for the horses, we've lost over 15 million acres that was designated once to wild horses, while livestock really do have a very large percentage of the grazing land, not only on BLM managed land, but on other state land, other federal lands, things like that. So it's politics driven by economics that has created policies around the way we manage the horses. And there's solutions, and it should be, why I'm involved with this issue is because it is such a easy fix. Not easy in terms of it's gonna take a lot of work, because it does take some work. It's gonna be management for a while, but to get back to a place of balance, it's gonna take time, but we really need to start 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like with a lot of the environmental issues in our country. Can you speak a little bit more about Return to Freedom's 4 tiers: sanctuary, education, advocacy, and conservation? Can you explain your strategy a little bit there?
Okay, so when I was very young, probably 6, I saw wild horses being chased, and my visceral response as a young girl who loved horses was to do something about it. So as I got older and I looked at what was happening, basically in the 90s, the Associated Press started to expose the issues that were happening to wild horses, and I wanted to take action. But I knew I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get started, so I really wanted to look at how do I add value. And the first thing that I thought about was that we have to build sort of an awareness that there are wild horses in America. Even now, I just don't even think we're quite hitting a tipping point yet. but we're getting closer. More and more people know that there are wild horses in America, but also to build a sort of not only an awareness, but an appreciation, to care about them. If we don't build, if people don't care about something, they're not going to try to conserve it or save it. So that had to be part of a very strong educational component. So that's where the sanctuary came in. You're never going to save them all in one place. But a sanctuary becomes, if you will, nature's classroom. We were able to invite people up there, and we started to manage horses in a natural way, i.e. stallions, mares, and where people could come and watch them raise their young, and understand. Even horse people would leave crying. They never got to see a stallion raising, their young or their offspring. They think they just fight, they're aggressive, that's all they're good for. And there's so much more than that. So to start to understand them, and then understanding that conservation, really has to appeal to everyone. So that's important with all global conservation efforts around the world. I looked at the ones that are successful, and it's when you are getting the buy-in or the support from not only the local economy, or it's a socioeconomic support, it's people have to care. People we don't agree with have to care. So it's sitting down with people on all sides of the aisle, of different sides of the issue, and saying, these are our non-negotiables. And they said, these are our non-negotiables. How do we find some common ground? Because who suffers are the animals or the natural resources that you're trying to protect. So that has been the long game, the long conversation. And I'm trying to think what my other component was. Sanctuary, I think I hit it. I think that's about it. So all of our management at the sanctuary gave us an opportunity to explore solutions that could be applied on the range. The conversation has moved a lot in the last 26 years, but the implementation of those solutions has not. And it's working with government agencies. There's a lot of inertia within the Bureau of Land Management. There is a lot of, they have a lack of staffing to address some of the important things. They have one person handling contracts. They have one person looking over NEPA violations. So there is sort of it's clogged. There's inertia. And that's the most frustrating thing. We can go to Washington and we can have really good conversations. We can work with different officials. We can work with different government agencies and have good conversations with the people in the program office. But when it comes down to the local district managers, some are very open and progressive and some are not. So it really kind of gets stuck at that level. But the sanctuary gives us that classroom and the ability to inspire people. Since I've started, there's a lot more sanctuaries now, and there's a lot more people engaged, and more people pushing the needle, moving the needle forward. So it's exciting.
Visiting the ranch definitely shaped me into who I am today for that very reason. Michael, my next question is for you. You went from being a top entertainment executive to running this nonprofit, Rewilding America Now. How did that journey happen, and what is rewilding, and why is it important?
Wow, a lot of questions there. Thank you. I was an entertainment executive. I don't know if I was top, but I spent 45 years in the movie business and about 5 years running the Comedy Store across the street. And I was approached by Amanda Kalimian, who is the founder of Rewilding America Now and has been doing this for about 15 years, rewilding horses. She approached me about doing a film about releasing some horses in North and South Dakota on an Indian reservation and with a couple ranchers who wanted to take in their horses because it improves their environment. And I was a little reluctant. I've made a few movies, but movies about horses and documentaries wasn't something I was used to or had done before, quite frankly. So to make a long story short, someone once said to me, say yes to what's put in front of you. And I was a little confused with what I wanted to do, and she put that in front of me, and I said yes. And I went to North Dakota and South Dakota to start the filmmaking, and it was a life-changing experience for me. I met people who were, I believe, are American heroes. These ranchers that are taking in these horses that have been rounded up by our government and put in pens for 10 or 15 years. Some of these horses that we rewilded on his ranch hadn't been on the free range for 10 or 15 years. And I saw that in person, and it literally changed my life. I went to an Indian reservation where this Native American Indian is rewilding buffalo and horses on his ranch, on his reservation, actually. And he too is an American hero. So I got inspired, is really the bottom line. Rewilding is bringing things back to its original state. And we're bringing horses back to their original state. That's what we're doing.
It's incredible. Rodger, as the CEO of Savory Holistics and team leader of Deserts to Grasslands, you stated that you wanted to turn 150,000 acres of a desert a year back into desert savanna grassland. Incredible. Where did that number come from, and what actionable solutions do you have to save our threatened ecosystems?
Well, firstly, thank you, but the number actually came from looking at water systems and micro water systems, and where the break-even point was, where you go from a non-sustaining micro water cycle to one that can sustain itself and go forward. So I've been involved with regenerative agriculture and holistic management my whole life. In fact, I learned it through osmosis. So when I was working with the ranchers around the world, I've worked in 64 countries, when I was working with everyone who was on land that was desertifying, it was very easy to turn it around and get it healthy just by changes in management. And my father's organization, the Savory Institute, is working on policy level. So I looked around and I went, okay, what's the next biggest problem facing humanity? And we've turned, over the last 250,000 years, humans, we're all guilty, have turned about 2/3 of our planet into desert. So the vast majority of the deserts that you studied in school are man-made. Well, if man made the desert, man can unmake the desert. So then I went on a quest to figure out, okay, what's the root cause of the problem, and then how do we solve it? And that's where the 150,000 acres a year came from, because you've got to have a big enough unit that it doesn't instantly dehydrate with the heat of the desert and the winds, the hot winds. So you've got to create enough of a micro water cycle. So that was why that unit. And then by coincidence, the X Prize came along, and they said they wanted to sequester 1 gigaton a year. And it was too funny when I did all the math, and 1 gigaton equaled 150,000 acres a year. So we can literally do this, and only Elon Musk and I get the joke. It's a problem with being a nerd with mathematics. But we can do this basically outside all of our desert cities across America, and the knowledge can spread around the world, because to do it, we actually use grazing animals. And when I say grazing animals, I really mean grazing animals. Now, the financial models work for, they work for cattle, because then the land improves in value because we've turned it from blowing sand into a grassland. So that's one way it pays for itself. The next way is you get paid for carbon sequestration, and most of those contracts are 100 years, so that's the next way it pays for itself. And then the other way it pays for itself is you take a young, low-valued animal, grazing animal, and you turn it into a very high-valued grazing animal. Just the rough mathematics, and that this year is crazy, but normally the prices of steers are about $800, and by the time we finished with them, they're worth about $8,000. So there's big enough spread. And then, like, for example, here in the Imperial Valley, the Los Angeles School District is desperate to get locally raised grass-finished beef. So there's the market, and everything is already here. But once you've created the 150,000 acres of grassland, now you've got to keep it alive, because it's over-rest that killed it and turned it to a desert. So once it's repaired, well, now we need grazing animals. And we've got 65,000 horses locked up in yards costing millions of dollars. When you have a grazing equine with grazing cattle, the cattle gain between 60 and 68% more weight. So they're a vital part of the whole ecosystem. The cattle do better when there's horses. So this whole argument of, oh, we've got to get rid of the horses because they're bad for the cattle, no, you've actually got to encourage the horses because your cattle will do better. So
Everything will do better.
yeah, everything. Yeah, the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
So it's so complex, but the solutions are easy. And the speakers just before us were talking about finance. Do you think you can get finance to do such an easy, beneficial project for the planet? I've been trying for 15 years. You can't. So we do have to kind of get people over the intrinsic fear of the unknown, but we know if we don't do anything, what happens? 26 civilizations have failed, ours is failing. We have to act, and we have to act urgently.
Thank you. Neda, RTF is best known for its hands-on sanctuary work, which provides a refuge for 500 wild horses and 50 burros. Has been a pivotal force in the 2 largest rescue missions for wild horses in the U.S. and involved with the rescue of rehoming more than 2,000 animals. That's amazing work, but the BLM removes thousands of horses from the range each year. Can you explain the value of sanctuary and its role in conservation in this context? I know we talked about it a little bit before, but...
Yeah, so I'm so excited about, I wish I knew when I started 26, 28 years ago, what I know now. Working with Rodger and people like Rodger, and it's a game changer. So it's really about the focus needs to change to land management and proper land management, which typically we're not taught. And I think that, thanks to social media and other things, the Savory method and other methods of regenerative agriculture are becoming more and more popular. But I've seen the results, we're witness to the results, and I'm so excited about it. So the sanctuary becomes like an incubator, in a sense, for me. It's where I've been able to prove things that my heart wanted. But now, can we prove it? So, we wanted stallions to live with their mayors. We wanted to, first and foremost, educate people at the sanctuary that horses live in herds. 28 years ago, that was our primary, the first thing. Then it's like, okay, well, then how do you manage reproduction? So we didn't want to sterilize horses. We didn't want to cause anything that was going to cause harm or change behavior. So we went for a non-hormonal reversible form of fertility control, which then thought, okay, well, that's good. Slow down reproduction, then not as many horses are going to get taken off, or, all those kinds of things that are happening to these poor horses. So is that the ultimate goal? No. That's the short game. That's working within the paradigm that we want to change. I don't know if I'll live to see the day when the government is going to actually make the change and we're going to restore our ecosystems and our large areas back to a more naturally balanced environment where there's enough predation to manage the actual grazing animals. But what's exciting for me now is that there is a way that the grazing animals are the solution and they're not the problem. And just at the sanctuary alone, we've been able to see just this incredible transformation. In 2 years, 2 years, we went from a dust bowl to grass. We were just there 2 days ago. The grass is so deep we can't walk through it. And we're just going, oh my God, we need more horses, we need more horses, we need more horses. So we're the first project, the only project really using just horses. We also have burros, but they do well with cattle. The more diversity, the better. And just to watch the biodiversity change as we increase biomass under Rodger's guidance has been phenomenal. And it's the thing that excites me the most, because I've been throwing hay to horses for 28 years. Now we have staff to do it, but I mean, what you get so now what's exciting is watching the grass grow. That's for me, Rodger, I just get really excited. This is how excited I was 28 years ago. Now I'm really excited about this. So I'm 100% in with 4 feet. And I think that's what the sanctuary has been able to do on all levels. So we utilize what we do for management at the sanctuary is the foundation of our education, and it's the foundation of our political work, including that the horse is native to North America, and that stigma that they're not has been a problem politically. But beyond politics, beyond an agency's directive for non-indigenous or indigenous or invasive, forget all that. culturally it's important for Americans to know and embrace that Equus originated in North America and went through all their adaptations here. So all of that has been taught through the sanctuary in our programs, reaching thousands of people a year and all those kinds of things, and inviting experts that can talk on these things too.
It's honestly incredible. I've been up to Slough, and it was quite literally a dirt patch, and these photos, the grass is like 4 feet high. It's amazing. It seems counterintuitive to have more animals on your land to bring up more grass,
Right.
but it's amazing. Michael, what is the controversy with wild horses here in the U.S., and why do you say horses aren't really important in that part of rewilding?
Well, you laid out the controversy at the very beginning. There's 80,000 wild horses left today. 20 years ago, there were 2 million. It's staggering. Horses are our American living history. They're native to North America. How often do you have living history and we're watching it be destroyed, and we're watching the environment destroyed? The horses will help the environment. The horses help the rangeland. The horses help the farmers. The horses help the cattle, as Rodger just explained. And the controversy is basically the government is breaking the law. They're spending $100 million of your money on your land, on your horses, and it's wrong. Mm-hmm. That's the controversy. Absolutely. What was the second question?
It's part of the.
Why are horses important for rewilding?
Well, I answered some of it. Horses are native to America. Biodiversity thrives with the horses. When I was in North Dakota, the rancher took me down to his about 15 acres of sunflowers where the horses were grazing before the sunflowers were planted. It was the most gorgeous thing. And then he took me to another farm or ranch about 20 miles down the road where that guy is growing sunflowers, but he has no horses. He's also a cattle rancher. No horses. The sunflowers look half as good as the sunflowers in the other place. That's why horses are important.
That's amazing. Rodger, we mentioned before that you've been working for Return to Freedom for the past few years. And for the first time ever, the horse is primarily the large grazing mammal along with wildlife. Is there a place for wild Mustang horses in California's new plan? Is that something we can hope for?
So, look, absolutely. You were just talking, and when we were on the ranch, I saw the biggest black-tailed deer I've ever seen. And his antlers had grown massive because his nutrition is now so good, because the forage is so nutritious, because in 2 years with, roughly 100 animals, we've completely changed the ecosystem. We've gone from the Dust Bowl to biodiversity, biomass. We saw turkeys, we saw everything. I literally walked in a paddock and got my feet wet in 6 inches of water. In a paddock that's named Gopher Ghetto because it was so bad, it just looked like the Wild West. It was awful. It's completely changed. So horses are a vital part of California's plan to turn, I think it's 1 million acres of desert they want to turn back. But just like there's the book, It's Not the Cow, It's the How, it's not the horse, it's the management. We have to manage the animals, and when we manage them correctly, they are part of the solution. Neda put up a whole bunch of fences, made them as unobtrusive as possible, but we were able to get recovery periods so that the plants are grazed, and then they're getting 6-9 months to recover. And it's that recovery that's vital in what we call brittle environments, which is anywhere where you have a wet season and a dry season, which is basically California all the way to about Arkansas. So that's the part of America that this knowledge has really got to catch on.
I'm just curious if you know off the top of your head so taxpayers are paying $100 million a year. If they were then to reallocate that money into stewarding the land, would that be cheaper, or would we be at the same kind of baseline?
So my Deserts to Grassland project, I was looking for $100 million a year and 65,000 cattle. I could do it just as easily with $100 million a year and 65,000 horses. It's not the animal that matters, but the money is there, but it's just tied up in bureaucracy and lobbying and red tape and people who can't see further than the end of their noses.
We're working on it.
My next question is for all of you. How does your collective work collaborate to maximize the benefits of these beautiful animals? I think the three of you need to keep talking forever.
Oh, we were talking outside. It's like so many people don't realize that they're working together, whether they like it or not.
Right.
And what's really special is when you recognize that you are. And I hope this relationship continues. I really do. I wanted to just one little thing about the grazing management. I just wanted to say that we put up these semi-permanent electric fences just to move the horses around because they tend to undergraze areas and overgraze others, and that was a problem on our specific ranch. But going to where the project that Michael is working on and large projects, we're hoping that when you have enough predation, that predation naturally would move the large herds along. And that's where that naturally would occur. And that's what we want. That's the long game. That's what we're all hoping for. But if you're, whether you're in a smaller area, like an urban area, whether you have a few horses or 500 horses or whatever it is, you can simulate that kind of a management plan so that you can do the right thing and keep the earth covered so that it absorbs 84% of the water instead of only 10% of the water when it's bare dirt. And Rodger's just, helping us along so he can do all these things. And the horses are thriving, and now, we can put more horses out again. So.
Sounds good to me.
Anyway, thank you guys.
You want to speak on collaboration at all before we go, Rodger?
Sure.
Michael?
Well, we're collaborating by being here right now. And you've inspired me, actually, to initiate something where the rewilding group needs to get together. We need to coordinate amongst ourselves. We each are doing it a little differently, maybe, but we have the same goal. And there needs to be greater collaboration because the government is massive.
That's why we're here.
Well, I'll end with the government is massive. I'm also working with the Pentagon, and part of one of their big desert project properties has a lot of horses, and I was trying to advise them how they can manage the horses in their bombing ranges to keep the horses safe and the poor pilots safe. But yeah, it is a much bigger conversation, and we do need to have it. And there's nothing like getting a group together, and we call it forming a holistic context, where we say, how do you want your lives to be, socially, economically, and environmentally? And when everyone describes that, it's amazing. I've done this all over the world. We all want the same thing. We just don't know it until we talk about it, and then once we realize it, then we can all move together in the same direction.
Thank you all so much. It's an honor to sit down with
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
Emma, thank you.